Well, this is what happens when your ambition outstrips your budget by a exponential amount. Classic Doctor Who review time. This one, Invasion of the Dinosaurs. This is a third Doctor story, and I have not seen this one before. This is the second story in which Sarah Jane Smith appears. So this follows on from The Time Warrior, which is one of my favorite Third Doctor stories. So it's coming off the back of something that's really, really good. And it is fun. It is decently done with one big asterisk, which I'll get to in a minute. And I liked this. I'm not sure I'd recommend it as an early viewing within the scope of like trying to take in Classic Who, because there's the big issue, which again I'll circle back to. But if you are if you're at a point where you're like, I'd like to see most, if not all, of Classic Who eventually, I think there's a lot of fun to be had here. There are some problems, but John Pertwee is charming as he ever is. And he has some moments that are really great. So the premise starts, he is basically just trying to return Sarah Jane back to Earth and her present time in the TARDIS. And they show up and it's abandoned. They're in London, but there's nobody there. There's almost no cars on the street. It's surprisingly eerie. Actually helped by a somewhat unfortunate quirk, which is that the first episode is in black and white. That was not an artistic choice. That is because the first episode of this serial, the color version, is a lost episode. The only surviving footage is black and white footage. So there are actually some fans who will recommend, if you can alter the settings on your TV or whatever, to watch the whole thing in black and white, because it is a heck of a lot more forgiving on some of the effects, as opposed to the color, which, you're going to see the seams regardless, but the color really shows the seams. And I'm not going to disagree with that. I had fun with the color as well, but it does add to that initial atmosphere, the fact that the first episode's in black and white. And, they're just wondering, trying to figure out what's going on. There's people looting, and I'll come back to the whole looters thing in a little bit. But, there's people looting, and eventually they find themselves getting arrested and charged with looting because London has been ordered evacuated. There is martial law. People caught on the streets, especially people in possession of goods that are not their own, are being detained without trial. So the Doctor and Sarah Jane get arrested and sentenced to be detained until the end of the emergency, at which point they'll be given a trial. And the Doctor goes up to get a mugshot. He's just smiling. He's going out of his way to this overly pleasant smile. And that's what I mean when I say he's charming. He's so effortlessly charming. Pertwee was. This also has the Brigadier in it, because obviously weirdness going down in London. Yeah, Unit's in on this. And this is some of the Brigadier's best stuff, I think. Or at least it's some of the stuff that really exemplifies why he's a lot of fun. The main thing just being how unflappable he is. As all of the absurdity that goes on in this episode just becomes evident, and he's just faced with all this weirdness, his reaction is, oh, well, all right then. So what do we do about it? He doesn't, that's the thing. He's out of his depth insofar as he doesn't know how to fix these things. That's why he needs the Doctor. But he's not out of his depth in terms of being overwhelmed. He's just like, oh, okay, well, I guess we're dealing with this now. And I love that about the Brig. He's so much fun. And he he plays well off of every Doctor he's ever had episodes with, but he plays well off Pertwee especially well. But like as the title implied, there are dinosaurs. Really cheap, janky dinosaurs. Like that's the big asterisk on this. Like a little bit like with, what was it, the Web Planet and the first Doctor episode. There is a perfectly serviceable, even at times good story going on underneath it. You have to either be willing to overlook some massive visual limitations because they could not pull off what they were trying for at all, or you have to be willing to just laugh at it. Either you need to know it's not going to bug you, or you need to take enjoyment out of it, because otherwise that could easily sink this for you. If janky effects, even grading on the curve of Doctor Who, where the effects are always a little janky, no, even on that grading curve, this is real janky. If that is a hard thing for you, this might not be a fun watch. I have come to embrace a certain kind of jank with Doctor Who. Like, the kind of janky I don't care for is when I feel like there's no reason for that not to be better. Like, when a set wobbles, there's no reason that you didn't anchor that properly. When the mask or like the makeup on an alien just sucks, like, okay, that's just a bad design. If you just taken the time to design better and put the same amount of time into applying the makeup, we could have had something better than that. But that's just bad, or it's lazy. That's the kind of jank that doesn't work for me. But when it's jank that is very clearly like, okay, the BBC was never gonna be able to pull that off, but you tried anyway, and bless you for it. That's adorable. You know, it's a child putting on their father's shoes and grabbing a briefcase and going, I'm a grown-up. Like, can you take it seriously? No. Is it adorable? Yes, it's adorable. But yeah, the dinosaurs, they're real bad. Especially, like, most of the shots are them just kind of standing there, like, looking around or like opening their mouths a little bit. When they try and make them walk, it's so bad. It's so bad. Oh, I got enjoyment out of that, but you need to know where you land with that kind of thing to know whether or not that's going to be a plus or a massive negative for you. As far as other stuff beyond that, the plot is actually pretty interesting and pretty layered. Because, like, the dinosaurs, oddly, for as much screen time as they get, and the fact that their names are in the title, although, interestingly, first episode, the visible title is just Invasion, not Invasion of the Dinosaurs, because they didn't want to spoil the surprise with the title. That's a good touch. I mean, like, especially considering that literally any episode that's called something of the Daleks has no business hiding the Daleks for more than 5 minutes and playing it like any kind of surprise. But, you know, that's just a nice touch. I liked that. But anyway, despite the title Invasion of the Dinosaurs are pretty incidental. The actual story going on, the actual plot, has to do with some actually pretty low-key mad scientists effectively mucking about with time in an effort to try and create a utopian human civilization. And I'm not going to get into all the ins and outs of that, particularly because I'm not trying to get overly spoilery. But there's this whole subplot that comes in about halfway through that Sarah Jane, I was going to say she stumbles onto. She doesn't. She gets kind of dragged into. I'm going to come back to Sarah Jane in a minute. And there's this whole thing with these people who think they are starting a new, they're building a new Earth, like literally on a new planet and restarting everything. And that is where a lot of the social commentary comes in, because ultimately what's motivating a lot of this from the villain side is like, look, the pollution, the overpopulation, the cruelty of man, like, this is not gonna get fixed. This is not gonna get better. We need to build something completely new. And normally having that be a villain's motivation might make me go, are you saying like concern for the environment is bad? And like, no, they're not, because it makes very clear. The doctor himself makes very clear at the end. He's like, look, their solution to the problem was horrific and horrible, and we were right to stop it. But they weren't wrong about what the problem was. They diagnosed the problem correctly. Their cure was monstrous. So again, anyone who tells you that Doctor Who has only recently gone woke, when this very clearly not only has deep environmental themes going on in it, but also very clearly has supremacist characters who are the bad guys, Like, yeah, no, this ain't new. And anyone who tells you, well, yeah, it was always kind of progressive, but it used to be more subtle. This is not subtle at all. So anyone who's claiming that, like, it's a bad faith argument. I know it is, but it's still so frustrating for me that there are people who there are definitely people who say it in bad faith and know they're lying. But there are other people who I think either don't know enough about Doctor Who or know it mainly through how it is talked about by freaking grifters who have bought into this and like, it's just wrong. It's just wrong. Anyways, I said I'd come back to Sarah Jane. She is unfortunately a little bit mixed in here. We actually kind of see some of the things that are some of my problems with Sarah Jane. From the episodes I've seen in which she appears, I honestly think Sarah Jane's first appearance in The Time Warrior is her best appearance. Because there she is the ideal of what she's supposed to be. She is spunky. She takes initiative. She is not afraid to challenge the Doctor on things. She's clever. She doesn't necessarily need rescuing. Well, later episodes, they turned her into a bit more of a screamer who would regularly need rescuing. And like, to be fair, at least some of the situations she finds herself in here, she does get herself out of, which is good. The problem is she stumbles into a lot of these and is she is way too trusting. So if there's a major issue with this, aside from the effects, it's that this really needed to be 4 parts, not 6. Stretching a story out to 6 episodes was honestly a problem from even the very early days. A lot of Doctor Who story, I would say actually most Doctor Who stories from Classic, 4 was plenty. 4 episodes was plenty to tell a story that they were trying to tell. And when you get to 6-parters or anything longer than that, it's like in modern era, seeing a single episode being stretched out into a 2-parter. And the things that happen in order to make that work don't help the story. And here, the big issue is that there are multiple characters who are basically like in on it. You know, there's this General Finch who, like, he shows up, he's all pale and scowling with this mustache. I'm like, okay, so you're a villain. There's another character who, like, it's hidden a little bit better. But he's also one of the earlier reveals. And then there is Mike Yates. Now, Mike Yates is a recurring unit officer. We've seen him before, and we'll see him again after this. Actually, Planet of the Spiders, he's the one who's off at the meditation retreat and kind of stumbles into opening that whole thing up. And that's post this. Mike Yates, this isn't really a spoiler because it gets revealed pretty early. Mike Yates is in on this deal. He's sided with the bad guys, basically been convinced by what their goals are, even if he isn't down with all of their methods. The thing is, that's the one that would have been surprising, except it's also the first one revealed. But the reason I say stretching this out to 6 episodes does it no favors is because the length of time it takes pretty much all of our good guys to realize how many people are in on it, and the fact that they continue to act as trusting as they do of other people, even after they've realized that there is definitely some people on the inside who are part of this thing. And Sarah Jane especially, 3 times, she got herself into a situation that I'm like, no, like, it was so. Now, granted, like, the first time I'll give a little bit of a pass to the first time, but once you realize that there are people trying to sneakily, get you killed or whatever, become suspicious. You're an investigative journalist, and then you go into this locked room with this freaking guy, and then you trust this other guy who you've been arguing with up to this point, and like, she just comes across as stupid. They have her just be so ridiculously trusting, especially given the circumstances that she's in, that she just gets caught and trapped 3 freaking times, and it gets worse every time because it gets more and more obvious every single time it happens that, like, this is a trap. What are you doing? And that kind of epitomizes how this era of Doctor Who, like Sarah Jane was a great companion. She was a great concept. The idea of a more self-reliant companion, one who wasn't just there to need to be rescued. Now, like, I don't want to sell previous companions short. There were other companions before that who are more than that. I've learned that that Jo was more than that. Like, that was my impression of her. No, she's got more than that going on, but that was still, from the writer's perspective, first and foremost, that was her purpose. And a lot of what extra was there was brought by the performer, Katie Manning. Here, like, they had a mandate to create someone who wasn't just going to be a damsel, and they keep damseling her anyway. I think the writers couldn't break the habit at this point. And I think a lot of Sarah Jane's later appearances suffer from this kind of thing. They're trying to write a character who was built to not be damseled, and they keep damseling her anyway. So, yeah, there's some frustration with this. But as much as I kind of went off on some of the problems, I do want to circle back, and emphasize as hard as I can, this is fun. Pertwee is fun. The effects, if you find the jank entertaining, which I did, this is good fun. And there's some interesting ideas and notions about it. It's saying some interesting things. And again, by today's standards, and especially at the time, this is woke as hell. And it's not subtle. Invasion of the Dinosaurs. Have you seen it? What did you think about it? Whatever your thoughts are, drop something down in the comments. Let's talk about it. Patreon pays the bills and enables me to do this as my living. Even if you can't help me out that way, like, share, subscribe. They all help. Don't worry too much about it, though. We take a relaxed attitude around here, so you can come on back next time you need a break. Now to thank my highest supporting patrons: Robin Moore, Zubin Lutfula, Goddess Elida, Oliver B., Tarak, the thing that goes doink in the anime, Fare Forit, Ulrich Bogdan, Loki Eris, Melinda Walters, Jen, Auntie-Kate808, Becky Sparks, Fernabilax the Poodle, Tracy Scrabbit, Angry Kasparov, Dave Hall, White Bearish, Rosalind Bennett, Toku Bluhuvian, Pau Barabajago, and Maraji. Thank you for your support and for keeping me and these guys fed. What are you doing?